Hello, everyone. Good morning, afternoon, or evening, based on where you are joining us from around the world. And welcome to Microsoft for Education digital event. This is the first digital event we are hosting targeting the Americas. In previous years, we've held regional events across the Americas, but in light of the current situation, we're taking this event all digital. My name is Manny Sandhu. I am a program manager for Microsoft Teams product group with a focus on education. I'm based in Toronto, Canada, and I'm joined today by a number of presenters from different groups across Microsoft, plus a team of moderators to answer any questions you may have. I'll discuss that piece shortly. This is day one of a two-day event. In parallel, we have a teaching and learning track taking place, but this track is targeted for the IT professional audience. Let's discuss today's agenda. Right now, we're starting with this keynote, as well as a what's new within this block of time. I'll then transition to Nick for managing Teams policies and governance, followed by Aaron for Teams calling and devices, a hot topic, at least for my group of customers. Talking a lot about this. We'll take a 15-minute break to stretch your legs, and after the break, I'll be back to continue the conversation and discussing Teams and LMS. A lot of exciting news here to share, and hopefully you guys appreciate that. Lastly, Max will be completing today's event with a two-part session on automation in Teams. This is taking you through the options to automate your team's lifecycle, also to keep systems in sync with the team systems in sync with other systems you may have at your institution. The point of that session or those sessions are help you to save time as well as your staff members time for ways to automate Teams creation as well as the team lifecycle approach. We appreciate you spending your time with us, whether you're watching live or watching the recording. We'll try to make this as exciting and interactive as we possibly can. There are activities in some of the sessions as well as links to the resources. Just a brief overview for tomorrow's session, chocked full of goodies such as cybersecurity, apps in Teams, SharePoint templates and spaces, and a session on professional development. I'm sure you're already thinking about it. I'm sure you're already asking the question, but yes, we will be providing the list or the slides and content that we are sharing over the next 2 days. The slides will be posted at this URL, but they will be posted after the sessions for your reference. Let's set the scene here. We host these events to focus in on preparations for the next academic year and really making sure digital tools are effectively being used to support those remote and hybrid scenarios by helping to share real best practices and the latest information with you. The impact this has on students is tremendous. Several reports highlight the digital skills gap to prepare them for the workforce. Not only proficiency with these tools during their academic life, but also as they transition to the working world, especially now with work being done online or remote for the foreseeable future. Microsoft Teams, as well as the entire Microsoft 365, M365 stack, is a very transferable skill by starting students leveraging the platform through their K-12 or higher ed academic years. It's building that skill set so they can, with confidence, put on their resumes or CVs, I know how to use Microsoft Teams beyond Microsoft 365, beyond the usual, I know how to use Word, I know how to use Excel, but some of the more advanced skills and collaborative tools such as Microsoft Teams. About a month or two ago, we released a blog aptly named 2 Years of Change in 2 months. And this is what we're seeing. The current situation has accelerated digital transformation. and essentially transformed how we work and interact. In that blog, we released some of the latest stats around Microsoft Teams, and they are staggering. As 183,000 education users for Microsoft Teams. That's just education. Combined with the other verticals, we're seeing 75 million daily active users in Microsoft Teams. That number is as of April 2020. And in one single day, we saw 4.1 billion with a B minutes of Teams meetings taking place. So really, if you think about this scenario the scenario in March and how you're working today and how we're forced to work today and make these plans, Teams really did help all aspects, all verticals, but especially the education vertical support their go online or go remote type scenarios. So what is Microsoft Teams? The way we design the product is meant to be a single hub which covers all aspects of an educational institution. There is a class template to support teaching and learning. Teams can also be used to support professional development communities and administrative use cases like meeting with the project management team, co-authoring a financial document, or new employee onboarding for the HR team. Whether it is communications or collaboration, internally or externally, the platform of Microsoft Teams minimizes context switching and increases productivity. It is not designed to replace systems at your institution, like the LMS or the student information system or your CRM. It is meant to integrate them into a single platform which can be used across your entire population. The idea of a hub for your institution isn't vaporware. It isn't just something that we say, it's real. And here's an example that we have from the University of Texas at Arlington system. I'll go through the video, it's about a 2-minute video, but I've seen this video many times and I still get so excited to watch this video.
Here at UT Arlington, we have a huge population of students, not only in our region, but we also serve students that are online. Not only do we have diversity in terms of where the students are, but diversity in terms of ethnicity and race and age, and also in terms of abilities. For us to find tools that can help us stay in communication in a very efficient way is really important, and Teams allows us to do that.
Before Teams, we were using Zoom, Slack, email, Jabber, a whole bunch of tools to try to interact. It was fairly ineffective to collaborate like that.
You have to think about how do we make it easy for students and faculty, administrative people to communicate on a day-to-day basis.
We had had so much change at UTA on the technology front. There was this concern there'd be fatigue on the campus and they wouldn't want to deal with Teams.
Once we had access, it's so easy to use that people caught on right away. Teams allows us to have chats between each other. The video portion in the video conference is huge. You can store materials, files, videos, images. Everything is in one place.
Teams fully integrated in with Microsoft Office Suite. We can still go back into the channel and we can find the file that we have been working on, and we can even collaborate as a group.
My information is encrypted. I can move it to any kind of cloud service that I want to. With all of this product consolidation, we've been able to drive our costs down while improving our quality of service. How do we intend to use Teams for the future? It's just going to grow.
The features keep coming. Teams is bringing a whole suite of things to us that we didn't really have an easy way to get to before. We're able to now work on problems, issues, and future plans for the campus much more efficiently.
Yeah, I still get excited by watching that video. I've seen it many times, but I just love the way the institution got together and really made it successful. Here's another case study. It's slightly different. It is from a U.S. higher education, University of South Florida, but this is more of how they leverage technology in academia. This time it's for their medical school. It goes a little bit beyond just Teams, but this gives you an example of how Teams with technology helps address the concern they have around adapting to the learning, the new way of learning and pedagogy. So we'll take a few minutes to review this.
By this year, 2020, medical knowledge is doubling every 73 days. Every moment we spend with them has to be high value. We have to really be training master learners, not master memorizers.
When we had the opportunity to build this new facility, it really gave us an opportunity to rethink medical education.
We wanted to build a technology platform in a building that would support potentially decades of innovation in the future.
When you have active learning and you're engaging their mind, we know that they don't have to study as much later. So anything that you can do to make that material easier to grasp, I think is really important.
But it was critical that we knew we were using technological tools that were perfect fits to that pedagogic theory, that educational theory, and that led naturally to Microsoft.
Our initial design in this building was actually very traditional. We had monitors on the walls around the classrooms. We moved away from that. We pulled the technology into the room and used Surface Hub 2s to really build a platform that could move throughout the building. Hubs could be used in a conference room, they could go up to a director's office, or they could stay there and support the learning in that space.
The building has been designed in terms of space with lots of small group learning, technology infused within those to allow for collaborating around hubs and whiteboards, etc., exactly as we envisioned.
The Surface Hub is intended for you to interact with, and so the layout of a room is completely different to encourage adoption of that technology.
We have an experiential learning lab on the third floor of the building where the walls can actually be moved around and you can construct whatever space you need.
Trying to make things more engaged, more active.
Technology creates behavior and space enables behavior. And so bringing those two things together to really help focus on adoption of technologies.
That students be able to join into a classroom experience no matter where they are. So we selected Microsoft Teams for that.
You can be in multiple small group sessions simultaneously. You can be in your lab and teaching a small group. It expands and leverages our faculty in a way that makes it much more efficient.
Vision for Teams really is to deliberately allow more synchronous and asynchronous learning.
Embedded into our DNA is this concept of continuous quality improvement, understanding how the human brain works and understanding how we learn more efficiently and effectively, again, leveraging technology.
Being innovative is really about how do you simplify? Delegate to the computer world what should be delegated to the computer world, and then what happens is then the human beings have the time, space, energy to be doing the things that human beings are really good at.
Now, I appreciate that I've shown you two examples and case studies from higher education, but the examples aren't just for higher education. So here's a quote from Jim Clibbert, who is the CIO of Duval County Public Schools. Duval County Public Schools is a large school district in the state of Florida in the United States with approximately 130,000 students. And he says, "The thing I really like is knowing that we have the ability to shift on a dime to online learning if it requires for any situation." Now, what I really like about this quote is it shows the extensibility of Teams, how Teams can be leveraged as while students are in the classroom. It also can be used to provide that same environment if and when they need to go in hybrid or fully remote environments. Teams provides that flexibility to deliver learning in that particular way. So what we've seen is Microsoft Teams is one hub where everything is connected, and we're one hub where everyone is connected. It first starts with communication. Teams is replacing Skype for Business Online, providing you the ability to secure chat, have online meetings, and collaboration, bringing in other Office applications, allowing you to work in a group setting, working on the same document. Teams is not just about Microsoft apps, though. This is the new modern Microsoft. It is an open, extensible ecosystem, allowing you to add hundreds of applications to your Teams environment. Think of this as the App Store on your phone. The experience that you have with your phone with never downloading an app from the store is similar to what a Teams experience would be without leveraging the applications that we have within the App Store. How much would your experience lag in comparison? Apps like bringing in Adobe Cloud, ServiceNow, Zendesk, Trello. And while we have hundreds of applications available in our App Store, we have an extensible platform that if the app isn't there, we allow you to develop your own experience for your apps inside of Teams as well. And then the last piece of the hub is that when we say Teams is built for education, it's really there to enhance the teaching and learning scenarios with apps like Flipgrid, OneNote Class Notebook, Wakelet, and many more. You're probably thinking, Manny, that's great, but what does it look like? In this video is how University of East London really went all in with Microsoft Teams by allowing students to have a safe space to collaborate and how they manage a life cycle of a team. Let's take a look.
Hi, my name is Vinel Ursu, and I will be talking to you about how the University of East London automated the creation of a team for class based on our student record system and linked Teams with Moodle and other resources at UEL, and thus making Teams a single gateway where students access their required resources. The use of Teams at UEL was initially an IT initiative to promote and encourage communication and collaboration within the department, but we have rapidly acknowledged the potential of the platform in both professional teams as well as teaching and learning due to its deep, seamless integration with Microsoft 365 tools, safe environment for our students and colleagues to engage for synchronous and asynchronous teaching and learning, and scalable and adaptable, making it very easy to use on different platforms, mobile or otherwise. As we started to learn the platform's capabilities, we started to think how we can utilize Teams as a learning and teaching tool, and how we can do so with very little disturbance to faculty and students. We have over 3,000 modules running at different levels. If this was to work, we were not going to ask for these to be created manually. We had to think of a way to automatically create these, link it to our VLE and other resources students may need to access throughout their journey at the university. At that time, the integration between Teams and Moodle didn't offer what we were really planning to achieve. We wanted to create a team for class, automatically enroll the teaching team, and every student registered for that module. But we wanted this process to be a dynamic one. Students may change their modules, drop out, teaching teams may change without much notice, and so on. So we needed to create a system that will dynamically manage the membership for every team. Enter MuleSoft, an enterprise bus service that made all of this possible, linking our student information system, our VLE, and a graph to ultimately talk to each other and deliver what we wanted: automatic creation of teams for class and dynamic membership management. Of course, this was not plug and play. Last but not least, we relied on the skills of our integration specialist and other colleagues to make it all happen. So how does it all actually work? In SITS, in every module record, there is a flag which tells the integration engine that this particular module needs to have a team. There is a scheduled process that queries the SITS database for any module that has this flag and looks for modules that do not have a team created. For all modules in SITS database without a team record in the integration database, create a team record for this module flagged as new. For all records in the integration database ready for processing, an API is called to check if a Moodle site exists for that module. If it exists, a team is created which is based on a predefined template, and the Graph API is called to add all relevant tabs and channels and flag these as having been created. A Moodle tab is added using a website tab, pointing at the URL of that respective module, as well as other resources. When the lockdown occurred, we were only a few days away to actually implementing this system, and we were able to make this happen very quickly, creating over 3,000 teams and added thousands of students and staff automatically to these teams over a weekend. We primarily created inactive teams, giving the teaching staff time to prepare content and get the team ready. When ready, the module leader would simply click on the activate button and students would start being enrolled. If a Moodle site did not exist, a team would not be created but added to a queue where it would be checked again in a few days. All create requests to the Graph API are tracked and flagged in the integration database, so it can be picked up where it left off when the Graph API calls are throttled or fail for whatever reason. Once the modules were created, intensive training went on. I have personally trained over 600 professional and academic staff, as well as approximately 1,000 students on how to work, teach and learn remotely using Teams in a couple of weeks. Of course, this training was delivered using Microsoft Teams. What you are seeing now is a team created by our integration engine, with the name of the team matching that of the record in SITS and Moodle, and with the channels and tabs easily directing students to library resources, study skills, and Moodle, as well as the default tabs that a team for class comes with. Below, you will see the integration engine at work, having removed a user from the team automatically. Once the user clicks on the Moodle tab, they will be directed to the respective Moodle site without having to leave the Teams environment, and using SSO, single sign-on, they will be admitted to the site without having to sign in again. It has been recognized that students could very much benefit from using Teams fully, and therefore we have allowed them to create their own teams and invite their peers. Of course, all based on clear governance and policies to control the number of inactive teams and maintain a tidy household. They have embraced this fully, and since the lockdown, they have created their own community to cope with the situation and stay in touch. At the University of East London, it has been agreed that a blended learning approach will be used in the upcoming academic year, with Teams being the platform used to deliver the online element, record lectures via stream, communicating via chat and team posts, and use Teams as a research tool. This slide gives you an idea of the usage of Teams at the university, with just under 15,000 active users, over 9,000 active channels, all in approximately 6,000 teams in total, and just under 50,000 meetings organized, to point to just a few stats in the last 90 days. The platform has seen a huge uptake from staff and students in the last few months, and will continue to do so in the years to come as more and more features are delivered. Thank you.
Yeah, it never surprises me how awesome people leverage the platform. What a great example from East London. Just a reminder, we will be covering automation later today. I'm just about up at time, but what I wanted to do is really cover a few last minute slides of what's new. We've invested a lot in Microsoft Teams. We continue to invest a lot in Microsoft Teams. Here's just a really snapshot of all the goodness that we've invested in the product. But what I really want to focus on is a feature that I'm super excited about. Is called Together Mode. So here we have a grid in Microsoft Teams, 7x7 that has recently been released. But we have, with this view, yes, we can see more faces, but we can actually see a lot more backgrounds, and that actually puts cognitive strain on us to really filter in on the individual. So if you're thinking from a class course delivery perspective, we're unable to really quickly see the reactions for the students and see how they're engaging or whatnot. With Together Mode, we use the power of AI and we strip out the backgrounds and we put them in an auditorium type setting so we can clearly see, are they engaging, if we need to repeat ourselves or call on a specific student for that space. Also, what else is new is the booking apps, the booking app, Microsoft Bookings within Microsoft Teams, that allows you to book office hours, tutorials, book labs if they're available. And we'll cover Go1 in the next LMS slide later on today, and the new enhancements that we have with SCORM. And then what else is coming soon that we've announced? So breakout rooms, student lobby, student well-being, more class insights, working better with Microsoft Teams. So we're continuing to invest in this space. I once again want to thank you for joining us today. I'm wrapping up the keynote and the what's new. I'm going to transition over to Nick to talk about policy and governance.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Thank you, Manny. My name is Nick Smith. I am a principal program manager with our EDU experiences team. And my role is to work to make sure that our Microsoft 365 products, including Teams, work across the platform and making sure that you're able to have a good experience. I myself have come from education before joining Microsoft. I have sat on the IT side of the table, working on administration, enablement, challenges of scale, the types of things that are often unique politics or concerns of education. Today, I'm going to spend a little bit of time just going through an introduction of how to manage Microsoft Teams for education. We only have half an hour, so I won't be able to go too deep into everything, but I want to make sure that I am able to share with you the top things that are important to you as we return to school in the Northern Hemisphere. So we'll spend a little bit of time talking about the admin interfaces, how you get to things, how you can manage policies to ensure that you have the appropriate student safety configurations in place that protect students from themselves, and also allow teachers to have control of the online learning environment. And then lastly, we'll talk about who can create teams and groups, which is all part of student safety in my mind, of making sure that you are allowing the right audiences to converse with the right audiences and to prevent those audiences from conversing with others if they should be. So first of all, there are a couple of different admin interfaces that you can use when interfacing with any Microsoft product. At Teams, we have the Teams Admin Center, which you can get to from logging into Office 365 with admin credentials, clicking on admin and going to the Teams Admin Center. I am in the admin center daily, testing stuff, validating stuff. So I always just use the short URL of admin.teams.microsoft.com. It's a quick shortcut to get there. This is the GUI for how you can go through and you can configure the Teams experience. I would say it is designed for doing the types of policy management that you might want to do, organizational settings, looking up information about specific users, getting access to different activity reports. But I would also say that it has been designed for small scale policy operations in the past. There's lots of great work that is happening in the admin center to bring in some of the capabilities of our large scale operations, reducing the need to use PowerShell. However, we also have PowerShell, which is really designed for some of the advanced configurations. You can access everything that you can do within the GUI from the admin center, but this also gives you more of an ability to go through and make changes at large scale, things that you might be wanting to do for examples of what you had just seen Manny talk about for automation of creation of 30,000 classes or of 3,000 classes, or assignment of policies to 20,000 teachers and staff. PowerShell is also the way in which you're going to be able to connect to how you can manage different elements of the system. Teams is the hub for Office 365, which means that there's also a place in which you can go through and you can make the underlying configurations of the technologies that Teams uses, whether it be Teams itself, whether it be some of the meeting capabilities that we've brought in from Skype Online that are now exposed within Teams, whether it be how we leverage Office 365 groups as the basis for Teams. PowerShell allows you to reach into and configure each of those areas based upon the different modules that you're able to bring in and administer. For those of you that are starting your Teams journey, there's one thing that I want to call out that we saw catch a lot of people kind of out as we had the massive transition to online learning back in the spring. Normally for enterprises, when you assign a license, we will give everyone the capabilities of that license. However, within education, we knew that there would be features of Teams that administrators would want to configure before giving these capabilities to everyone within the environment. And so there's an additional step for education that you need to do in order to make sure that you enable Teams for your school. And that is to sign into Office 365 using admin credentials. Go into the admin center and you can search in settings and Teams. And in there is the capability to turn Teams on based upon the type of license that has been assigned to the user. Essentially, this binary, is it on or off, allows you to say whether or not they're able to use Teams at all. By default, students had been disabled. We made changes as we had lots of people creating new tenants and being confused by this setting. But if you have not used Teams with students before, I encourage you to go and check the setting and make sure that you've clicked the box to enable Teams for your students. Once you make this change, it can take up to 24 hours to take effect. So make sure that you plan appropriately depending upon when your semester is going to start. The next thing that I want to talk about is Teams policies. Teams policies are the ways in which you can go through and you can configure what permissions or what experience different sets of users may have. Within education, this is key because you want to make sure that your staff and educators have the ability to use Teams in a way in which they can collaborate, they can drive discussions, they can schedule meetings, they can chat with their peers. However, there will be other audiences, such as primary school students, where these things may be less desirable. You may want to make sure that you set content ratings on Giphies. You may want to restrict their ability to chat with peers. You may want to prevent them from scheduling meetings. And policies are the way in which we do this. There are endless ways in which you can go through and configure policies. And rather than just having one policy that you can go through and toggle hundreds of settings in, we have split these policies up based upon the nature of how they might be used. And that's where you'll see things like messaging policies that define what you're able to do or ways in which you're able to use Teams when you're sending messages, either within private chat or within channels. We have meeting policies that define what you're allowed to do within meetings, calling policies on whether or not you see the phone icon. And the total number of policies in Teams will continue to grow as we have additional features. And so it's important to understand what these policies are, where you can go through and configure them, and how you assign them for student safety. Every policy has a global or org-wide default policy. And this is set based upon the most common configurations of those users of Teams. That is inclusive of the world, which is enterprise and education. And so it's important that we think about the capabilities that we want students and educators to have and customize those policies and make sure that they get assigned. But do know if you go and you change the global policy, that is going to affect the permissions for any users who have not specifically been assigned another policy to dictate what their experience is. We'll talk about the process of assigning policies here in a moment. There are also some elements in which, as we were rapidly developing Teams and shipping new features based upon learnings from remote learning and remote working, there are some settings that made it into the policies that could be configured with PowerShell that came into the modern GUI a little bit later. We did that very specifically because we wanted to make sure we could get capabilities into the hands of our customers, our educators, our students, rather than waiting for all the fit and finish of all the different areas in which this could be configured. So that was an example in which we made some policy settings available in PowerShell that could configure the experience that were not yet in the GUI, just to make sure that you had the opportunity to use those as quickly as possible. A good way of knowing what these policies are when they're coming out, what might be configurable in PowerShell, is to make sure that you keep an eye on the Office 365 Message Center, where we post any updates of new features that are coming, anything that has a policy change with it, we will actually publish that to you well before the feature becomes available for end users, making sure that you as an admin have time to go through, adjust your policies before the feature becomes available for use. Some common policy configurations that we see within education are things like being able to disable private chat for primary school students. What this would do is the chat icon that you have along the left-hand side of Teams would disappear for them. They would not be able to send chats between their peers, making any communication that they wanted to have within a team. And that would mean that would be within a moderated environment in which you had a teacher and there was someone who was able to monitor if there was any type of bullying or inappropriate content that was being shared. However, this is a huge core feature set for any staff educators. And this is where we would want to start thinking about defining different policies for students versus educators, because we want to make sure that they have that on. There may be other capabilities that we want to make sure that our staff and educators have, such as the ability to edit or delete their sent messages. You know, we all have typos at times in our messages. It allows them to go back and do that. You can allow the team owner or the educator in the case of a classroom type team to delete other sent messages if a student happened to send something that was inappropriate. They could go ahead and take care of that and delete that message based upon the policies that have been assigned. One piece of note here is that I've listed primary school student and I've listed staff educator. Higher education school students fall somewhere in between. They're often adults. There are less concerns around their ability to converse with fellow students. In fact, that is something that it very much allows them to continue to converse, work, do group projects, and it's something that we recommend be turned on for high school or for higher education students. If you are wondering about what some of the recommendations or other common configuration scopes might be, we actually have something in the admin center called EDU policy packages. And in those EDU policy packages, we have a number of different types of audiences that might need different settings, whether it be a higher education student, a grade school student versus a secondary school student, a grade school teacher versus a higher education educator. And so you can go through and you can take a look at what those settings are for kind of common settings that we see people use. But we also see that these settings will differ depending upon culture, depending upon local legal requirements, depending upon the type of school that people are in. And so we encourage you to look at those for an example, but take a look at each of the settings and define what is right for you. Some other policies that I want to call out, especially as we're all thinking about student safety and how to make sure that the platform is configured correctly as we go back to school, are in meeting policies, where we would want to prevent students from being able to schedule meetings, right? If they could schedule meetings, they could schedule that in the evening, they could chat with their friends, and there may not necessarily be an adult in the conversation. And so that would be an area where you'd want to disable that for students, but yet it needs to be on for staff and educators because they need to have those for remote learning. The staff and educator policy is where we might want to go through and configure the default meeting options. Who's allowed automatically in from the lobby? Who's automatically a presenter versus an attendee? By going through and configuring these options within their meeting policy, we're making it easier for them to, by default, be in control of the online learning environment rather than having to go and change settings per meeting. And so these are different areas in which we don't want to just take the defaults of what the global policy is, but really think about the different audience, how they're going to be using the platform, and tailor the policies together. In this meeting, we're using a live event. Live events aren't typically something that an educator or a student are using, and so that might be areas in which you would want to prevent the creation of live events. And there's a similar policy. Teams has the ability of calling people. to make an audio or a video phone call based upon who's in the directory. We did get lots of feedback from EDU customers when this feature was released, and we actually held this feature back quite a while for EDU customers because we wanted to make sure we had the ability to disable that for students to prevent them from being able to call. Again, our thought around student safety is around the different ways in which students might be able to use the product in unmoderated ways that could potentially cause issues within a school. And so those are different settings that we have here. Things like creation of private channels. There are also a couple of other settings or policies that might be interesting to you, which are app setup and app permissions policies. As Manny said before, there's a rich app ecosystem that allows you to take advantage of different apps in the store. Some of them you may want to use, whether it be Wakelet or Kahoot or Flipgrid or something else. With app setup policies, you can actually automatically install apps for all of your users, and you can even define whether or not you want those apps to show up along the left-hand bar, just as you would with chat, meetings, Teams, others. Okay. There are additional policies that I didn't call out here because they might be related to advanced calling features that aren't typically used. Aaron Steele might talk about some of those later on when he talks about our calling features. So once we have the policies set up, now we need to think about how we're going to go through and we're going to do assignment of those policies. There are a couple of options that we have, and these all three can be used in conjunction to help achieve our goal. The Teams Admin Center, previously you've been able to use it to assign policies to individual users in small batches, 5, 10, maybe up to 100 at a time, depending upon if you were able to go and select those. Coming soon, and actually this slide, the couple days between creating the slide and our conversation, this may have shipped for meeting, calling, and messaging policies already to your tenants, which is the ability to go through and assign these policies based upon a security group membership. As I said, we have many different policy types, and coming soon will be the addition of those group policy assignment for those other policy types. Our engineering teams have done a lot of work with priority to try and make sure that we get this available for schools to use in the back to school time period, because it very much makes it easier for the assignment of these policies. We have something called batch policy processing of assignments, which will actually allow you to give a list of users of up to 5,000 users, go through and assign those policies. The advantage of doing this through our batch process is that rather than running and creating your own custom script and waiting for it, you can have it run on our service, you'll get a report back, and it supports a number of different ways in which we have assigning policies. And then something that was new this summer that has been a long time ask, and we're very thankful for education, is the ability to assign policies based upon a user's group membership. So if you already have groups that are set up that define who your educators are or who your students are, you can assign policies based upon those groups. And if you have any overlapping groups, you can actually go through and define what the priority is for those. So that's available in PowerShell for all the different, most of the policy types now, and is arriving in the Admin Center very quickly. I do want to talk about strategies for policy assignment. And that is that when we think about the population that we have within schools, we want to make sure that we have two things in mind. One, how can I assign policies with the least amount of effort? And then two, how can I make sure that I'm providing the security that is needed by default? And what this means, particularly for education, is that the students are often the most restrictive policy, as well as the largest group of policies that are assigned. And with that in mind, our strategy is to create custom policies for the educators and or staff, assign those policies to educators and staff, and then go through and change the default or global settings for students. This means that if someone is added to the to your environment, they're enabled for Teams, they haven't been put in any of the security groups yet, they will get the most restrictive settings for students. It also means that our number of operations for having to assign these policies is greatly reduced since we're doing it for staff and educators. And we find that this reduces the complexity quite a bit as we're talking about policy assignments. There is an order of precedent within policies, and that is that we will go through and we will look at policies that are assigned directly to the user and say if a policy has been assigned to them, we're going to give that a higher order of precedence than a policy that's assigned via groups. If there's nothing assigned via groups, then we'll go ahead and default back to the org-wide policy. What this means, if you have been using Teams in the past, or if you used it last semester, you'll probably want to move to the new security group assignment or policy assignment via security groups, because it's going to make it a lot easier for you to manage the policies that are signed. The recommended process for this is to go ahead and create the custom policies for your staff educators, assign those policies via security group to those staff educators, making sure that they get it. If they had any previous user assigned policies, that will still take precedent. And so you need to go through and remove that. And that's a way in which we can use batch policy assignment and say, hey, here's the list of all my educators, go through and remove the previous policy that's assigned. And that way, you know that they're going to be relying on the policy assigned by security group. You make one change to that policy or that security group, or maybe someone leaves and takes on another role, they'll make sure you get the policy that should be appropriate to their role. At that point, we will want to go through and customize the global policies to match our desired student settings. And then finally, if we had any per user policies assigned for those students from last semester, we can use batch policy to go through and remove it. The reason why I have it in this order is so that we are not changing someone's experience and removing capabilities prior to having the policies configured in place for group policy management. If you're wondering what policy might be assigned to a user, you can always look up that user in the Teams admin portal, or you can use the Get CS user policy assignment to validate which policy is applying to that user. Both have been updated to make sure that it is reflective of the order of precedent in which policies are assigned. So the next thing that I want to talk about in the last few minutes that I have is, now that we've gone through and we've configured policies for what someone should be allowed to do or not do, is we have another configuration scope, which is control who's allowed to create teams. By default, everyone is allowed to create teams. And this is actually a great experience because it reduces the boundary of someone wanting to collaborate with a group, to start a project, to start a class project or a study group. And when they click on join or create a team, they get this bubble to create a team. This is our recommendation for all staff, educators, and higher education students. There's value in them creating team. I think that was part of the intro that Manny had in one of the videos of students being able to go and work amongst their groups from creating these teams. However, you may not want this for your primary school students, because this is another way in which they might be able to create a team, invite other students, and have that unmoderated conversation. And the way that we do this is by going through and configuring a security group of who is allowed to create teams. Like I said before, we do recommend that you allow staff and educators to do this. And that's because all staff and educators will have a purpose for using Teams for collaboration that we may not know about outside the context of a classroom setting. Could be things like the fun run, or coordination of the yearbook, or there's a faculty sponsor for a student group that they might want to do for Model UN or other pieces. So rather than them having to go and ask IT and have you create it, giving them the ability to create this allows them the flexibility. So we do have the ability in which you can define a security group of who's allowed to create teams. And so that is where you would go through and say, my teachers and educators and staff can create. I provided the link at the bottom of the slide. I know no one's going to be able to type this in. What I did was I highlighted the managed creation of groups. If you go and Bing and Google Microsoft managed creation of groups, you will be able to find this as one of the top settings. In addition to being able to configure who can create teams, there are additional things that you might want to put in from the perspective of controlling what the naming of these teams might be, avoiding abuse. And so also in that setting where space where you can go and configure who can create teams, you can define a naming convention that will take attributes from their account and define what the naming convention might be. So you might want to prefix it with the department, then have the name that they were providing, and then maybe even have something after it. So you can define, given what they give you, what you want their team to be named. There's also a list of blocked words that you can upload that prevent people from going through and creating teams with those names. So if you want to reserve names like financial aid or provost or IT or HR, or you wanted to prevent vulgarity in team names, certainly we know that students can be very creative in this, but we've had education institutions that have gone through and shared their list of blocked words that are pretty creative in vulgarity. And that would mean that if their team name included any of the words in that list, they would be prevented from actually creating the team. And so this gives you a little bit of control. Certainly you can still manage and monitor which teams are being created so that if there's anything outside the scope of what your organizational guidelines are, you can go through and address that afterwards. But we find having this available for the staff, educators, higher education students is very valuable. We do recommend that you do not allow primary school students to create teams. Finally, if you have any organizational guidelines, you can provide a URL so that when they go through to create teams, they will see a link to that of how they should be using teams. That was a very, very quick tour, half-an-hour tour of some of the key things that I really want to make sure that you know as we prepare for the return of school and people using Teams for online learning. Call to action here, really go through and make sure that if you're planning on using Teams that it's already enabled for your students and educators. That way you're not surprised on day one of school. Make sure you go through, configure and assign your policies for student safety. We have a number of articles out there. If you search our material on some recommendations for student safety, check those EDU policy packages. Review your team creation settings for users. Make sure that those who should be able to create teams can do that, and prevent primary school students from creating teams that they shouldn't be allowed. And then finally, as this was only half an hour, we have a lot more great IT focused training. Go and check it out at aka.ms Teams EDU webinars. Thank you very much. And with that, I am going to hand off to Aaron Steele to talk a little bit about Teams calling features.
Thanks, Nick. My name is Aaron Steele. I'm a program manager inside of Teams Engineering as well. You can find me here on Twitter at Baking Steel. I'm here to talk about calling and meetings inside of the Teams ecosphere here with us. Whether it's morning, evening, or night for you, welcome again and thanks again. As I was saying, with Teams, we are trying to make calling made simple. It's the idea that calling doesn't have to just be a replacement for your phone system, but it can also be something that your users can use just to communicate and collaborate. It works anywhere on any device. It works on your mobile phone, it works on your computer. It delivers a rich set of calling features, and for you IT pros, it is fairly easy to set up and manage it, as Nick was saying, in terms of policies and management. With calling for Teams, we think about this in two ways. We have the core calling system, which we call phone system. That is what lets your users internally connect to each other across their Teams clients. But if you want to then replace that and set it up for PSTN or phone system connectivity, meaning you want your users to be able to make and receive calls to and from the public switch telephone network, you have a couple of options. You either want to go through and add Microsoft calling plans, or you want to go through and configure direct routing to enable that full calling experience for your users. With this calling setup and what you can do, you are able to replace an existing, what we call legacy PBX, with the system that is Microsoft Teams, and reducing your reliance on that on-premises solution. We know lots of customers across the EDU space and across the enterprise are having these retirement challenges with their existing phone systems and needing to replace them that is working more at a cloud and cloud scale. And especially with your users and your students and your educators working from home, giving them this additional functionality to be able to potentially take a work call from their home when they're not in the office and answer those students' questions if needed. We do call about and mention here that calling plans, which are the basics of bringing your phone system directly to Teams, are available in a number of countries. With some exceptions here, we've got, Australia and Japan are a little unique in how they're provided, but overall, these are the countries where we provide this calling system. It provides for direct rapid provisioning, one place where you go to deploy it, one place where you go to configure it, no additional contracts to sign or anything. It allows for both number porting, where you can use your existing phone numbers, as well as enhanced 911 in the countries that require that. If necessary, it provides for local and long distance as well as international calling, depending on the use cases your users have. Whereas we get to this thing called direct routing. With direct routing, we have a PSTN provider. So that is your phone or PBX is still there in the mix, providing that connectivity off to the publicly switched telephone network. Then integrated into your Teams service is what we call a session border controller. That session border controller is what allows your users to make that connectivity from the Teams into the PSTN service while maintaining those existing contracts you have without porting numbers, without making those configuration changes. You just configure those systems to connect to each other, and that is your option. This allows you to deploy phone system basically anywhere in the world. You can deploy Teams. You can deploy a phone system based on direct routing. So whether you're trying to deploy this in one of the regions where we have calling plan support or in one of the regions where that doesn't exist, this is the solution that allows you to get that voice service to your users regardless. It also allows you to, if you need to, for your phone system or for your school, provide for things like analog systems, i.e. you've got a fax or something else there in the system, or you've got a paging system if you're doing a hybrid learning model. That SBC and these direct routing systems allow you to interop with that third party. Some additional features that we see here that can really help both educators as well as students to sort of take some of the load off the people that and are features that our sort of enterprises use pretty heavily are things like auto attendance and call queues. Both auto attendance and call queues are features of the Teams service that allow, and in the case of an auto attendant, it's a feature that allows for an automated operator to answer during given time with an answer with voice prompts or custom button press prompts and direct people to the right grouping of folks inside of the organization to answer those calls or get directed to should they need a question. Whereas a call queue really is your much more set up to, hey, I want a single phone number, and that is my phone number for attendance. And when that rings, I want it to ring these 3 administrative assistants, and I want them to ring in succession. That's what a call queue provides you the capability of. We have a couple of tools for our administrators and for the IT pros who are dealing with calling to really look at and dig into their end users' experiences. The first one of these tools is Call Analytics. This is the tool that lets an administrator and an IT pro answer that question of why did a particular user have an issue on a call today, yesterday, last week? What was the cause of it? How many people had those things? And it helps them to dig into those things. This tool is useful when you have external vendors supporting your calling deployment because they can get access to this Call Analytics tool and very little else about the Teams Admin Center. Then we have our call quality dashboard. This call quality dashboard is much more geared towards trending and looking at this data from an ongoing perspective. This helps your network team to be able to look at the trends across your calling environment to ensure that they are providing the highest quality of service to your users when they are meeting and having those calls and having those meetings with their students. So you can give advice to your educators, and you can give advice to your network team around what experiences are causing their users to have the best and what experiences are causing their users to have some questionable or experiences that need improvement. Here's a little slide that just shows some of the newest releases and things that we've released in our calling stack. So we shipped recently some features around local media optimization. So this is allowing customers who have large and varied network conditions for their existing telephony infrastructure to be able to take advantage of that without needing to add additional internet connectivity in those. So for you educators and IT pros dealing with education who have people in lots of regions or in lots of areas, this local media optimization can help you do that without needing to add additional internet connectivity. Then we have convenience recording. This is allowing two Teams users to do a one-to-one recording of their call without needing to escalate that to a meeting. We cover a few more things that we have here. We did add some auto attendant and call queue improvements such that we can now fail over to a phone number in case of no answer and things of that nature. In terms of devices, this is where we'll jump into next. We've added a bunch of different features here that really enhance that collaboration experience across devices. So we'll dig into what meeting devices and what meeting devices bring to the world here, especially in the EDU sector now. When we think about meetings in Teams, we don't think about a meeting as a point in time. We do think about this as a meeting life cycle, meaning there is history and context to this meeting. There are follow-ups that come out of meetings. And in the case of a classroom where you might have a meeting as a class, it's possible that you would want to pre-stage that with content ahead of time, put links into those meetings, put content into those meetings, and afterwards, students can use that meeting space to ask questions about the content that was going on in this meeting. So you can take notes and track actions there. We want these things to be extremely easy, high quality. So we've done work and we're doing additional work to simplify the join experience for users, make it much more intuitive when they're joining meetings, deploying additional network optimizations on our side to make sure that joining and sharing over Wi-Fi and cellular networks are high quality, providing for real-time co-authoring integrated. So this is the capability for you to share a document and have a work group or a working group have that document open and directly accessible and editable for everybody in the meeting at the same time. We want to simplify and make sure that we have join from PC, whether it's PC or Mac or mobile or web or a meeting room or from the home or on the go via PSTN or phone system dial-in. We want that to be as simple and easy as possible. And when you add in meeting room systems, Microsoft Teams room systems, the idea of one touch or even touchless join for those. As you're running a hybrid setup where you've got some people in the office and some not, being able to walk into that room and have a companion join, automatically join you into your meeting because you used your mobile phone to join, makes for a safer and cleaner experience for everybody. We do want to configure this so it has automatic live and searchable transcriptions. We want to be able to make sure that this setup is usable for everybody and keep the extensibility for everybody in this to make sure it's available. We want to be able to share and contribute in real time. Integrated whiteboard digital ink as well as content capture are key to making sure that the in-person experience extends out to the out-of-person experience or the experience for the remote party. We want this as well to be secure and manageable, bringing all the power of the entire Office 365 stack to ensure that true compliance, security, and manageability means that you can manage your calls and your meetings for your users with confidence. Again, providing the ability for users to dial in if their phone system isn't, or if their network connectivity isn't as good as they need it to be. Integrated calling and cloud phone system, full PSTN support, and we've recently announced an additional set of support for SIP meeting room devices and SIP phone system devices to allow for the extensibility of this. As was discussed, there have been a few recent additions into Teams around the join options and the join experience. We now are supporting multi-window meetings and multi-window chats. So your meetings are now popping out into a new window to give you that additional functionality. And we've got 2 new features. One of these is fairly key for education and can give users in the education space, or your educators, a really good idea of what their students are doing and bringing them all onto the screen at once. And those are Together Mode and Large Gallery. Both of these features support the ability for having up to 49 videos turned on at a time, and for the educator to be able to look at those while they're doing something else to share their screen or interact with and collaborate with the students. The one thing we want to make sure that we drive and everybody understands here really is that we want to have a consistent experience in Teams across devices, screen sizes, platforms. We want to support very fully the PC, the Mac, the mobile, the web experience. Whether you're in a conference room or a desk phone, we want all those things to be accessible for you. And we want you to be able to collaborate directly via the mobile. Everything from screen share from your mobile to a live camera feed from your mobile to presenting a PowerPoint from your mobile phone. These are all capabilities that should enable your users to be more collaborative. As we mentioned here, there's a secure camera store. This camera store and the secure recording, this is you doing something akin to a screen share, and it's saved to the meeting chat inside of your meeting. So you can do a lot of this control directly from your mobile to share these things out to your student. You're in a science class and you need to share out that you need to share out the recent experiment that you're doing, whether you're at home or whatnot. You can very easily do that without picking up your computer and trying to point your webcam at something. You can fire up Teams on your mobile device and share that screenshot or that picture directly into the meeting. As we mentioned here, audio conferencing is available in 90+ countries. It's commercially available in 100+ countries. We support dial out back to 190 countries, dial in numbers for 110 countries and 400 cities around the world, and that interactive voice response in 44 languages and dialects. So this helps your users when they're coming into the meeting, their language can be recognized and they can be prompted for their PIN and their passcode in their native language. I want to make sure that everybody understands that the showcase and the set of devices that are available for Teams really cater to a lot of the different experiences that people have and need across Teams. Office.com/Teams devices is your one-stop shop, your one-place URL to be able to find the devices, whether it's personal devices from headsets and phones to mobile phone workstations to speaker pucks and PCs to conference room phones, Teams room systems, and or large screen collaboration devices like the Surface devices that were mentioned in one of our prior sessions. Through our partners from Poly, Pexip, and BlueJeans, we do support this thing called Cloud Video Interop. This is supporting your legacy meeting room devices to enable those meeting room devices to have a collaborative and video experience inside of a Teams meeting without needing to go through and replace all your existing infrastructure. You can leverage some of that existing endpoint system and still allow those devices to fulfill their purpose for a period of time. You walk through here what the service is for The Poly devices are really prioritized towards their own Poly endpoints, and there are contact numbers on here. PEXIP and BlueJeans provide for a free setup for a basic configuration for your service, and each one, so PEXIP would provide for free 2-session setups, and BlueJeans provides for a 12-month free usage for up to 5 meetings at a time. In terms of our IP phones and our personal peripherals, again, as your users are going to be in this hybrid setup where they're teaching from home potentially, you might want to invest in some of these headsets, speakerphones, depending on what devices. Again, office.com/Teams devices. These devices will provide your users that ability to have a really high quality audio experience while on the phone with their students. Then when we start getting into our Teams room systems and our Surface Hub, these are things that are much more in place in a hybrid setup where you might have some students locally in that room, or the educator in that room who wants to have then some ability to send content out to students remotely. The devices on the left support this idea of content capture that we'll get into in a minute. And then we have a bunch of additional new recent releases in the collaboration bar, everything from Logitech Brios to Jabra Panicasts to these new Poly Studio devices and a dedicated content camera from Crestron. Provide for that hybrid learning experience. And then we have these new collaboration bars from Yealink and Poly. We're adding in and bringing the Outlook people experience to the Teams app, allowing for quick and easy one-touch dial, one-touch join for users to be able to collaborate and connect one-on-one, and a speed dial option for those people. Doing that across the phones, whether they're on your mobile phone or on a phone app on one of the partner devices. And we're bringing together better together with PC calling support, this idea that I can be on a call with video on my phone that's next to me at my desk and still sharing content from my PC in the same call, in the same meeting. As I was talking about proximity join, this is that zero-touch experience for a conference room. So if you've got shared spaces and shared setups for your users, where they're able to come in and need to come in here and join a meeting from a room, but you don't want to have them necessarily touching to have to sanitize this. They can use their mobile device, join the meeting with their mobile device, and then it will prompt them based on a Bluetooth detection setup to join the meeting room that's in the same space. Combining Teams rooms with touch and ink support. So as you've got devices that support touch and ink, you can combine Teams rooms with touch displays to allow for natural interaction across the whiteboard to be able to share that to all the participants in the meeting and collaborate across that. And then we have this idea of content capture. So you've got some people in the room and some people remotely, and you want to bring that experience of what's being shared on a physical whiteboard to the people who are in the meeting, so that as people write on the whiteboard in that, or write on the chalkboard, or write on a surface, that content can be shared to everybody and they don't have to do it on a new digital platform. So this is just showing through what that content capture looks like. It's the idea that I can be writing directly on a whiteboard, and all the people remotely get a better experience than the people in the rooms. As was mentioned, we're doing this today in a Teams live event. This live event is in a capability to support broadcasts. So for those of you who are dealing in the space where they might need to present a large set of attendees, i.e. you want to have a hall full of, so to speak, a hall full of students watching an event, you can do that through our broadcast and our live events. It's able to be scheduled directly from the Teams client, produced and broadcast up to 20,000 attendees. Attendees are able to watch this event live or potentially on demand on their desktop, on their web, on their mobile. As you're seeing in this meeting, you can do question and answer, queuing, moderation while people are speaking, and it also supports for additional hardware-based encoders for those advanced production features. So if you have a production house or an AV studio in your education space, they can do additional things and additional capabilities with that broadcast feature. One of the newer things that we've got in our IT Pro toolkit for devices is specifically device management. So we're working on everything from zero-touch enrollment to device grouping by location, and ability to do software updates directly from the portal, schedule availability and manage availability in the devices without needing to add additional hardware or configuration in the room. Tracking of those so you can know where and when things are used and have that reporting available to you, as well as health monitoring and management. This is just a little screenshot for you of sort of what the Teams room peripheral looks like. I can have a definition of this room. I can see what room system is in it, what cameras are connected, what displays are connected, what additional content cameras or pieces are connected to it, and understand that all those things are connected, flowing well, and get an idea from it around the overall quality that's coming from that system, so I can know if I need to do something with it as that IT admin. I appreciate everybody listening, and I think at this point we're going to take a break for a little while.
We're going to talk for about the next 15 minutes or so about Microsoft Teams and augmenting the learning management system. So it's something I know is dear to the hearts of many in education, and we get lots of conversations about it. And I know we've had a couple of questions already today about Moodle, for example, and we're going to come on to that in just a little bit. So Microsoft Teams, as you look at it, is that one hub with everyone connected for things like teaching and learning. Back just before I joined Microsoft, we sat as a team and we talked a lot about the building blocks of a modern educational institution. And many of you might have seen this before, but what we did was we sat down and we thought about what are the things that make up this sort of modern education platform, and how could Microsoft help with that? And we went through things like course materials and management, and how there's apps in bits in SharePoint and Teams and OneNote that can help with that. Microsoft Stream for your video content, how we're doing assessments through Office and forms, how we're doing the creation of cohorts and automation that Dominic will go through later on, lecture capture and streaming that Ian touched on a little bit today as well in part of our communications, using your Outlook calendar for calendars, how we're doing assignments through OneNote, through Teams, and harnessing that power of OneDrive in particular for people. And then how about how we're going to analyze and do the personalization and development of the platform through things like Power BI, My Analytics and Insights and various other parts that we know that we've got there. And we know that some organizations have moved forward with that very quickly, and others are still finding their way a little bit to utilize the tools that we have. So we know that Teams has something for everyone. So no matter where you are in your journey, and no matter where you're heading and what you think is the mainstay of your platform at the moment, there's an LMS for learning content and Teams for collaboration. So when people say, well, our LMS or our VLE, if you like to put it that way, is something like Canvas or Blackboard or Moodle, well, Teams can work with you on that, and that's really important. You could have Teams in the hub paired with the LMS content, and we'll discuss that in a couple of slides later on about Moodle, for example, when we walk through how that could happen. And then last but not least, you could have Teams for learning and collaboration as the platform that you want to use. And I know that we have colleges in the UK that have gone to Teams as that platform only and decided they didn't need an LMS or a VLE to work alongside it. They worked with that. And we've got lots of examples of that. We've got webinars that we can sort of share later on if need be of how people and colleges have done that and how their success has sort of grown this year through doing that. So if we think of LMS for learning content and Teams for collaboration, this is an example that we have with Canvas. So from the faculty side, when you're looking at Teams, you've got things like messaging, we've got announcements, we've got notes, files, conferences, and extensibility. And on the LMS side of that, when you're thinking about how we're using Canvas in this instance, we've got modules that are organising the courses by topics and weeks. They've got assignments in there, they've got quizzes, and they've got grades. And I think that's really important that we think about how both platforms can work together in this instance to help deliver that ultimate aim of student outcomes and student goals and getting the best for them. And then if we think about the Microsoft and Canvas LMS integrations, you've got Microsoft sign-in, so you've got single sign-on. You've got OneDrive files and the LTI integration that comes with that. You've got Word, Excel, PowerPoint embedded via LTI, so you can access them from Canvas. You've got the OneDrive cloud assignments and OneNote class notebook LTI that will help connect everything together. And last but not least, one of the powerful things and one of the really important things we've seen Canvas do is use Immersive Reader and some of our accessibility tools to make sure that their platform is accessible for all when they're coming to use their particular platform. So a really nice way of them working with us and together to achieve what we would like to see. And then if you think about how that can work now, we announced obviously the integration of meetings, and you can see the little diagram animation on the right there showing you how you can start to access meetings from this particular team. And the most important part, and we'll talk about this in a moment, is actually to set up your team meeting from a channel. So we're going to use channel meetings to make sure that we're making that all the staff and the students in that meeting are secure, and you've got everything running in the way you want it to in terms of meeting options. So students are attendees and the staff are the ones that are the presenters, and you have control over that to help with what you're trying to do. So why is that so important? If you were to create a meeting by sending a link via your LMS, you are likely to get a calendar invite, but you're not going to benefit from the other things that we've got here in this particular box. So a student who did not attend the meeting can't watch the recording in the same way if it's not through a channel meeting. The chat wouldn't be visible to students who have missed the session for them to then catch up and ask questions and find out things that they might need to know. You don't have the ability to have your 2-click app pinning for the recording for all the students. And you also, the class materials folder to share the learning resources is available through that channel meeting, but isn't available through that LMS link. So you've got to think very carefully about how you're making that. And there is a difference in how you're making it when you're creating that meeting. If you're creating it from the Teams interface, you can see that you can add a channel, well, a team in the first instance, and then a channel where you're going to meet and get that link so that everyone can then see it. So it's so important that you set it up correctly to eliminate any of those problems that we've seen some lecturers having, where you're getting anonymous join, you're getting people muting the lecturers as they're trying to do things, for example. So how does Teams work when it's paired with an LMS content? So let's take this example of Moodle that we talked about, and we're going to go now through and have that chat about. So you get your tabs and you get your automation. So with the tabs, you get a selected Moodle course that's embedded within the team channel, and educators can access the user interface in Teams by authenticating into Moodle in a single authentication. You get the automation. So Moodle hosts your data, and you can automatically create those teams based on that Moodle data via the app integration. So it's going to do a lot of that heavy lifting for you, which is some of the other things that we hear people asking for and thinking about. And just a quick note, Dominic, I answered a question that was asking about adding the Insights tab to Teams if you've already had the team created through Moodle. So I don't know if you might be able to cover that a little bit through your MS Graph stuff a little bit later on. So we're thinking about how those sorts of things might work. So Moodles and Teams, you get your improved apps features. So here we have a tab that has a Moodle class within it, and you can see that it has the general, it has the cities over time, what is a city, so it's got all of the things that you would expect to see. So it creates your class team, and that's the important thing. So it's giving you all of the benefits of having a class team type. It has your Moodle calendar, it brings in the activity feed for you as well. You have resources and that integrated login. And then at the moment we're having working very closely with Schooler, who have developed and are now working at deploying that service through Schooler for that enriched experience of Moodle. And here's a quick example of what that looks like as we look through it. So popping into the team, clicking on the Moodle tab, and then you see that you need to just quickly sign in, and then it will load your course details and bringing up now the general area, more information on what is the city, your different topics that you have available for you there in that course summary. and the fact that you can take that full screen if you want to, so it allows you to see more things. So then you can see course information, your feed, faculty and staff, and your participants. So you can start to build and work your way through this and have that particular part automated so that then you can see into it and see that Microsoft demo as you go in there. So we're working our way through and seeing all that different content that's available from within Moodle over this particular time. You'll see that it keeps some of the formatting, which is brilliant for people. And that was one of the things that we got as feedback for others when they were talking to us about it. Finish very shortly. Go. And then they're just pinning the Moodle dashboard to the left-hand rail there, so that will be there all the time, and then they can go backwards and forwards to that particular course and look over the calendar, etc., as we said that was going to be brought in. So something that's really powerful for them to be able to use. So Moodle and Teams, it's the app is free to use. You get deployment with the service by Schooler. It's a paid for service if you want them to help you with your Moodle setup, which they're currently running at a flat fee, which is really useful. And I've been on plenty of calls this last week or two where organizations are now looking at this, particularly for the new academic year, and planning on how that can happen with the use of Schooler to help them work their way through it. Dominic mentioned a little bit earlier on about Go1, for example, and many organizations have talked to us about SCORM supported material. And for now, for the first time, we can start to talk about SCORM being supported within Microsoft Teams through the Go1 app and how that can look. And if you're a member of the Blended Learning Consortium, you'll see here that we've been working with them, and all of their content should be on the Go1 platform for you to be able to access through Teams for the start of the next academic year, which I think will be fantastic for those organizations that have been looking to access SCORM for some time. Since Office 365 went into the cloud, and being able to have it into Teams is another great bonus for us to be able to get access to it from there. Teams and Go1, you're thinking about that best content search experience, how you can set it up in 2 minutes, for example, and it's free to view your SCORM content. So you can not only upload the stuff from the things that we've got in front of us, but you can also upload your own content through talking to them as a particular group of people as well. If we take ourselves back to those building blocks, we've been through a number of those different ones so that we can see what's happening and how that can work, so that they can see exactly what it is you're going to do. So we've been through how we can work together in some of those things, and then how that will work for us as we start to move on. And I'm going to stop there because we're just 1 minute past in this particular time, and I'm handing over to Dominic. Thanks, Dominic.
Good afternoon, good morning, or good evening, depending where you are joining us from around the world. Welcome to our Class Teams Automation webinar. My name is Dominic Williamson, and I'm here today to deliver this next hour of content. So let's jump into it, because we do have a very busy agenda for everyone together today.
Let's have a look at today's agenda. We'll be covering 4 key topics: resources for today's session, an overview of automation with Class Teams and some real examples of it being done today, school data sync, and Microsoft Graph as your options to automate at scale. So everything that you will need for today, all of the slides and samples, you will have access to from the website. So I'm also going to put that into the chat window, but please make sure you click on the link and you open it up in your web browser, because you will need this particularly for the hands-on opportunities that we will be covering. So this is where you're going to see, for example, the sample code and a few of the other things that really will be required for today's session. So please click that link or type it into your browser and make sure you have that ready for a little bit later on. Now, the big question, we're talking about class team automation. Why do we talk about automation, and why is this something that we've been hosting by popular demand? Well, as the name automation suggests, this really is around creating workflows that are scalable for your school, college, or university, allowing you to then save time for staff, meaning they do not need to then go through and manually create a class team.
Also, we see it then reducing costs, the time and labor that it takes, for example, for those staff members to have to create teams, or for internal administrative staff to do things like managing the membership of the team itself. All of these things can be automated. And we also then, of course, one of the important things as we do see hybrid learning, such a topic and important thing right now, is making sure our students have a fantastic experience, whether they're physically in person with us or experiencing their classes and teaching remotely through an online environment like Microsoft Teams. How do we create that consistency for the students and for the staff members that they're able to then effectively use the online tools as part of their hybrid, remote, or another form of learning? So this is really where automation is such an important topic right now, as we're preparing for the return to teaching, or if you're watching the recording, maybe you've already begun teaching and you're wanting to streamline the workflows internally. Now, the important thing about the concepts that we are covering today is that it is using then a platform agnostic approach. So if you're saying, but I use this VLE or I use this student management system, effectively when we're talking about the Microsoft Graph, these are REST APIs that are not dependent on a specific platform. So whether you're using, say, Canvas, Blackboard, Moodle, Banner, or one of the many other platforms that are available out there that you might want to either look to have data in sync with, or be able to then create automation flows to complement. This is really where you'll see it's how we then send the data between those platforms that allows us to then have these effective workflows and create automation solutions. And this is the key part of what we'll be covering today, the ability to map your data once and then automate those experiences. Now, you might be saying, all right, this is all sounding pretty good, but I want to see this tangible. Show me an example of where this is real. And that's exactly what's happening today at the University of East London. Yanel and the team there have done a fantastic example of taking advantage of the Microsoft Graph, where they have then firstly empowered their staff and students. So staff and students, for example, can self-create teams. They're using Office 365 governance to make sure that students are empowered to be able to, for example, have remote social spaces. But what they've also done is they're taking advantage of the capabilities of the Microsoft Graph, and they're automatically creating 3,000 class teams today. And so this is where you're going to see how they take information from the student information system, how that workflow goes into their VLE or learning management system, which in their example is Moodle, and then how they're using the Microsoft Graph to create a class team to then complement that Moodle course site. So this is the example from University of East London.
Hi, my name is Yanel Ersu, and I will be talking to you about how the University of East London automated the creation of Team for Class based on our student record system and linked Teams with Moodle and other resources at UEL, and thus making Teams a single gateway where students access their required resources. The use of Teams at UEL was initially an IT initiative to promote and encourage communication and collaboration within the department, but we have rapidly acknowledged the potential of the platform in both professional teams as well as teaching and learning due to its deep, seamless integration with Microsoft 365 tools, safe environment for our students and colleagues to engage for synchronous and asynchronous teaching and learning, and scalable and adaptable, making it very easy to use on different platforms, mobile or otherwise. As we started to learn the platform's capabilities, we started to think how we can utilize Teams as a learning and teaching tool, and how we can do so with very little disturbance to faculty and students. We have over 3,000 modules running at different levels. If this was to work, we were not going to ask for these to be created manually. We had to think of a way to automatically create these, link it to our VLE and other resources students may need to access throughout their journey at the university. At that time, the integration between Teams and Moodle didn't offer what we were really planning to achieve. We wanted to create a team for class, automatically enroll the teaching team, and every student registered for that module. But we wanted this process to be a dynamic one. Students may change their modules, drop out, teaching teams may change without much notice, and so on. So we needed to create a system that will dynamically manage the membership for every team. Enter MuleSoft, an enterprise bus service that made all of this possible, linking our student information system, our VLE, and the graph to ultimately talk to each other and deliver what we wanted: automatic creation of teams for class and dynamic membership management. Of course, this was not plug and play. Last but not least, we relied on the skills of our integration specialist and other colleagues to make it all happen. So how does it all actually work? In SITS, in every module record, there is a flag which tells the integration engine that this particular module needs to have a team. There is a scheduled process that queries the SITS database for any module that has this flag and looks for modules that do not have a team created. For all modules in SITS database without a team record in the integration database, create a team record for this module flagged as new. For all records in the integration database ready for processing, an API is called to check if a Moodle site exists for that module. If it exists, a team is created which is based on a predefined template, and the Graph API is called to add all relevant tabs and channels and flag these as having been created. A Moodle tab is added using a website tab, pointing at the URL of that respective module, as well as other resources. When the lockdown occurred, we were only a few days away to actually implementing this system, and we were able to make this happen very quickly, creating over 3,000 teams and added thousands of students and staff automatically to these teams over a weekend. We primarily created inactive teams, giving the teaching staff time to prepare content and get the team ready. When ready, the module leader would simply click on the activate button and students would start being enrolled. If a Moodle site did not exist, a team would not be created but added to a queue where it would be checked again in a few days. All create requests to the Graph API are tracked and flagged in the integration database, so it can be picked up where it left off when the Graph API calls are throttled or fail for whatever reason. Once the modules were created, intensive training went on. I have personally trained over 600 professional and academic staff, as well as approximately 1,000 students, on how to work, teach and learn remotely using Teams in a couple of weeks. Of course, this training was delivered using Microsoft Teams. What you are seeing now is a team created by our integration engine, with the name of the team matching that of the record in SITS and Moodle, and with the channels and tabs easily directing students to library resources, study skills, and Moodle, as well as the default tabs that a team for class comes with. Below, you will see the integration engine at work, having removed a user from the team automatically. Once the user clicks on the Moodle tab, they will be directed to the respective Moodle site without having to leave the Teams environment, and using SSO, single sign-on, they will be admitted to the site without having to sign in again. It has been recognized that students could very much benefit from using Teams fully, and therefore we have allowed them to create their own teams and invite their peers, of course all based on clear governance and policies to control the number of inactive teams and maintain a tidy household. They have embraced this fully, and since the lockdown they have created their own community to cope with the situation and stay in touch. At the University of East London, it has been agreed that a blended learning approach will be used in the upcoming academic year, with Teams being the platform used to deliver the online element, record lectures via stream, communicating via chat and team posts, and use Teams as a research tool. This slide gives you an idea of the usage of Teams at the university, with just under 15,000 active users, over 9,000 active channels, all in approximately 6,000 teams in total, and just under 50,000 meetings organized, to point to just a few stats in the last 90 days. The platform has seen a huge uptake from staff and students in the last few months, and will continue to do so in the years to come as more and more features are delivered. Thank you.
So that's a tremendous example from the team at University of East London. And one of the things that you would have heard Yanel mention was the ability to have that activate button. And so that is the ability where when you create a class team automatically, you can then have it in a pending state that only the educator can then access it and the students cannot view it until that educator is ready. And so here's a screenshot in the top right from Kingston University who have achieved exactly that. You'll notice what they have is it says there is a button across the top of the class team. And so that's where it gives you the ability to then, where it says the slightly zoomed in example, 9 students are waiting to join, click activate. This is extremely useful because I get a lot of feedback and a lot of questions of, well, how do we have an area where our academics can prepare their courses before then students can join? Or what happens if we create a class team, but maybe the educator doesn't end up using it? This is exactly what you need to be able to make sure that your environment is being then effectively managed, where again, now the educator has the ability to be informed in terms of being able to prepare the course materials, click activate when they're ready. And you'll notice we do even have an API that allows you as the IT administrators also to be able to activate that. So some really fantastic and useful things that you have as part of this. All right, so in that regard, let's head across and jump into a bit of an overview of the difference now between the Microsoft Graph and one of the other topics we'll be talking about, which is school data sync. So we have some options available for you because absolutely within Microsoft, we appreciate not everyone will have access to, say, some of the internal skills to be able to do things like scripting the Microsoft Graph APIs. And so this is where you have a no-code solution to automatically create class teams called School Data Sync. What it does is it allows you to then create an automatic workflow where you export data from your student information system. And then what it'll do is then bring that across and then automatically create the class teams for you. So it manages all of the logic. Importantly, School Data Sync is free for education, so there is no cost to use either School Data Sync. When we come to the Microsoft Graph, it's free to use. The thing to keep in mind with the Graph is it gives you the full control of the team's lifecycle, from creation to archival. But it does require you to actually create that workflow yourself. So you can kind of think of it as School Data Sync, no code, but it's very much a sort of a fixed offering, or the Graph gives you all of the control, but you do need to decide how you want to manage that. And so this is where it does give you enhanced capabilities that are not available within School Data Sync, where you can then do things like pre-install apps. A great example was from University of East London, how they have a website tab, which is a link back to their VLE. And that could be any learning management system that has a web app experience. This is where you can then do things like be able to then archive the team. And it is an important one to be able to then really get that full set of capabilities and create the most standardized experience where you have then that granular control. And we'll talk more about that shortly.
So what is the core concept of how does this all work?
Well, this is effectively it. It's the idea that we have the ability to go through and take information just like you have today from your student information system. You would typically have a workflow that automatically takes the course roster, the students, the educators, the classes, and then that information is being sent to your learning management system. That could be, for example, Moodle, Blackboard, Canvas, Desire to Learn, or one of the others. The idea is then taking a copy of that data and then sending it to Office 365 and Microsoft Teams. And we achieve this then using the School Data Sync or the Microsoft Graph APIs, as you saw in the example from the University of East London. What this means is we are now then, because that's the same data set being sent across, the two platforms are then in sync. So this is how we can then have our Canvas course, our Blackboard site, or our Moodle site have the same membership and have a class team created to complement that learning environment. One of the things that's extremely useful about Microsoft Teams, of course, and why we see it being used so much within courses is in addition to all of the online meetings capabilities, it's also a tool that is being used in the workplace. So if we think about our students, and the experience for our students, this is then helping them also develop job-ready skills that they can take into the workplace. And it's a key piece of feedback that we're seeing students that desire to be not just using technology, but using technology that will help them when they transition into the workforce. As I mentioned, one of the core capabilities, of course, with Microsoft Teams is that it does have a robust set of online meeting capabilities to then support remote and hybrid learning scenarios. And when we have a class team created, that gives us many benefits. And so I'll give an example here. You have the ability to create two types of meetings within Microsoft Teams. You can do an ad hoc one-off meeting. So that's when you send, like, say, a few people a meeting invite. That is a meeting in isolation. What we're talking about then is one of the big benefits of having a class team created is also to support online learning. That's where you can then host a meeting in the context of that team. And that is then called a channel meeting. And you'll notice on the right-hand side, I have then my B102 Business Studies course, and then I can select, for example, to host my online lesson in week 1 entrepreneurship. What this means is it provides many benefits. It means that my students, even if they don't attend the live session, they're able to view the recording afterwards. It means then if my students, of course, receive a calendar invite, but also students, for example, who may come late to the session or miss it, or then want to be able to go back and review because they might have only joined in week 2. This is where everything stays in context of that class team. And it also makes it much easier for educators to be able to then share the recordings back within the team itself, because everyone who has access to that Office 365 group will then have access to the recording when it is provided to them. So this is a really useful capability that we have, and that's why class teams are so important, not just to have a space to have, say, conversations, but to also have effective online synchronous lessons. So let's go into the options that we have. And the first one that I shared, which is the no-code managed offering, School Data Sync, is available to you from sds.microsoft.com. And where that goes is then you'll notice you have a web portal. As an administrator for your environment, you can go in, you can then set up your school data sync profiles, and this is how you can then have that workflow. So you're taking a copy of the data, and then that flows across into Office 365. School data sync is then using things like the graph behind the scenes to automatically create teams, and then that becomes a managed service that, for example, every 24 hours gets an updated set of information. And let me show you what that workflow looks like. So you create a sync profile. A then CSV file format is uploaded, or if you're using things like OneRoster, there is existing APIs. That then gets sent across. Using then the school data sync format, that then has a level of validation just to make sure the data looks okay. And at that point, then it goes into Office 365 and starts to sync with Azure Active Directory, of course, to make sure the identities are correct. And then that flows through to the Office 365 groups. For example, then on day 1, it might receive a brand new class. Let's go with the B102 Business Studies course. If there is no existing class created, it'll automatically create the class team. It'll look at the students, it'll look at the educators, and it, of course, will then create the educators as the team owners, the students as the team members, and then it's automatically created. Let's say 2 days later that 2 students leave and 1 new student joins, it then sees that there is a difference now in the class roster, and it automatically removes, say, those 2 students, and then automatically adds in the new student, say Sally Smith, and then the next time Sally opens up Teams, she will then see the class team that she is now a part of. So School Data Sync, as mentioned, it's available free for education. That's how you can then go through and use the School Data Sync portal to be able to set it up. One of the things that I have heard in the past is, well, what about if I'm in further or higher education? This is where School Data Sync have announced the version 2 format. And so what that means is it is then revised and enhanced to much better support than also further and higher education. So if you're a university or a college, you will have a much better experience now to map your data back to the file formats. And of course, Microsoft Fast Track is available to help with deployment. So this is where you have then School Data Sync as the option where no code's required. You just need to then make sure you correctly map your data as it then flows into SDS, and then that will automatically create your class teams. One thing to also highlight, as part of the Microsoft app ecosystem, we now also have an app for Moodle. So for those who are using Moodle today, this is where you can then automatically create it automatically creates class teams. And as part of this, what it'll do is then integrate the Moodle calendar, the materials within the course site, the activity feed, single sign-on, and then Schooler, who are the creators of the Moodle app for Teams, they also have a deployment service that they can provide to you to be able to then go through and again, deploy in a very, very quick and easy way. So anyone that's using Moodle right now, I would highly encourage that you simply click on apps within Microsoft Teams. And from the App Store in Teams, simply search Moodle and you'll notice the Moodle dashboard is available. Click on that and that has all of the information that you need to get started with the Moodle app. So there we go. We have School Data Sync as an automated option. That's no coding required. For those that are using Moodle as their learning management system, we have the Moodle app. And for those that are looking for more granular control, or you might be using, say, Canvas, Blackboard, Desire to Learn, or you really want to have management over every step of the team's life cycle, this is where the Microsoft Graph is for you. Because the Microsoft Graph really gives you that control as every single stage in the team lifecycle, there is an API available, and that means you can then fully control the creation of a team, adding members, configuring team settings, adding channels, installing apps automatically, adding in tabs like we saw University of East London were doing with a website view of their learning management system. And then of course, at the end of that course, the ability to archive or delete the team. And this is really where the Microsoft Graph gives you that full control across the entire life cycle. And so I get a few questions and I say, well, hang on, but Dominic, I've been using PowerShell. One thing to keep in mind is whilst PowerShell is good for some traditional management tasks, it does not give you the full automation capabilities that the Microsoft Graph does. So this is where, yes, PowerShell does give you some abilities over Teams, but if you want the more modern and more powerful management capabilities that gives you control over every step of the cycle, this is where the Microsoft Graph is really the next step and the ability to be able to fully manage teams at scale and that life cycle. So as a quick snapshot on the difference between the API offerings, so you'll notice the PowerShell. Of course, one of the challenges is with PowerShell that it often requires multiple different commandlets to be able to go through. And you'll notice to be able to manage teams, we need to go through use Teams, Exchange, Azure AD. Notice on the right-hand side, the Microsoft Graph gives you significantly more capabilities and many that you can simply not do with PowerShell. Particularly on those bottom few rows, you can manage apps, you can manage tabs, cloning of teams, interacting with messages in teams, archiving of teams. All of that is only possible with the Microsoft Graph. So for those who are new to Microsoft Graph, I wanted to take a quick second to just do a quick overview of it. And then we're going to start going hands-on specifically around creating teams using the graph, and you'll get a chance to do that as well. So for anyone that might be new to Microsoft Team, I should say the Microsoft Graph, effectively, it is your gateway into the data within the Office 365 and Microsoft 365 Cloud. Effectively, what it is, it's us providing a clean, single set of APIs that give you access and automation workflows across the data within your tenant. So this is where the graph is a really powerful tool to be able to then interact not just with Microsoft Teams, but it's the same place you go to be able to interact with the calendar. So for example, automatically create calendar events, to be able to interact with mail, files, say in OneDrive or SharePoint, your Office 365 groups, and users within your environment. And then this becomes that single layer where you can then interact with all of those different parts of Office 365. Now, for anyone that is brand new to the graph, fear not, you are in the right place, because we're going to be starting with the key basics that you need to be able to use the graph with Microsoft Teams. So effectively, the graph is a set of REST APIs that you can then use, or you can access it via an SDK. And so this is how we then call on those graph endpoints. The nice thing about this is flexible for you in your preferred way that you want to engage with the graph. So this is where you can actually make requests to the graphs in multiple different ways, whatever your preference is, using HTTP, C#, JavaScript, Objective-C, And there's also many blogs out there how you can even use PowerShell to call aspects of the Microsoft Graph. And you'll notice on the right-hand side is just a really quick snapshot example of just how simple the graph can be to call. In this example here, it's creating a team. All we do is we then request the Teams API. And you'll notice in 3 lines with an open and closing bracket, because what this is a JSON request. It simply has the type of template we want to create, education class, my class team as a display name, and description. So it's actually a really nice, very easy to then manipulate language, because effectively it's just using JSON in this example here, and then calling the right endpoint. So there's a few key operations to be aware of, and then we'll start getting hands-on with trying out and making some of our own Graph API calls ourselves. Now, for today, you really only need to know 3 things, which is really, really lovely. Effectively, when we make a call to the Microsoft Graph, we have the intent. So for example, we want to list some information, we want to get some information, we want to create something. That is then a HTTP method. So, if I want to have a list of something, I'm getting a list or I'm getting information around a member. So that's where we use the get method. And then, for example, if I want to create something, well, I'm sending you an instruction to do something, or I'm posting an instruction. And that's why we use a post method to be able to then create something like a new team. So if we're then looking at how that applies within the Microsoft Graph endpoint, you'll notice the example on the right-hand side. We get /users, or we get /users /NID, because it's an ID for, let's say, a user. Or we can then post some information because we want to create a team, and therefore we post that to the Teams API. So let me give a little bit more of an example of how that worked within what you saw from the University of East London. So this is where they had the workflow that Yanel was taking you through a little bit earlier. And that's where they have a scheduled process that queries their student information database. It then looks for their predefined flag and says, okay, I now need to go and create a class team. And that's what I've highlighted in yellow. Create a new class team for the class template using, for a class using a template. And so this is exactly where they go through and they do a create, which is a post method, and then they create a team itself. If I do a double click on exactly how that works, this is then taking literally the screenshot from the public Microsoft Graph documentation, and everything that we'll be talking about today is all part of the Microsoft Graph public documentation. So this is really these screenshots that you're seeing, you have access to all of this that you can share with your colleagues, and you can go back to as many times as you need. And so this is exactly where you'll see, for example, when I go through, the very first line of the example that we see here is the type of command, the endpoint I need to call, which is post https graph.microsoft.com /beta/teams, because we need to call the Teams API, which is the request that we're making too. Next, we send it the request body. So I simply go through and I provided that JSON, which always requires an open bracket and a closed bracket. And so this is where I go through and I can see here, firstly, we call the Teams template education class, give it a display name, and we then give it a description. Last but not least, the Microsoft Graph, of course, has security as a core piece of the way that it's defined. So no, not any user in your environment can call the graph. Only yourselves as administrators with the correct permissions can then approve and select the permissions required to even make this Graph API call. And so that's why we then see here the types of permissions. In this example, to create a team, we need group read write all and directory read write all, because we're creating an Office 365 group, which is fundamental to a Microsoft team. But effectively, that's it. With just those 3 parts, we now have the request we send, the body, which is what it actually needs to do. In this example, create my class team, and then making sure we have the permissions to actually do that within your environment. So this is where you might be saying, all right, Dominic, this is looking pretty good. I really want to get started with it. how do I begin? And so this is where we have a great way for you to start practicing and start also using, whether you're a new time or first time person using the graph, or you're someone who has had extensive experience. The way that we really learn all of the capabilities of the Microsoft Graph is using the Graph Explorer. The Graph Explorer is simply a tool that allows you to focus on the requests that you want to make rather than having to write out all of the extra logic. And so this is a fantastic way, either as a first-time developer, a first-time service integrator, or IT pro. This is where then, as any IT admin can then go here, log in, and then start exploring and using then the Microsoft Graph APIs. And so this is really where it's the perfect place for us to begin today. All right, so let me take you through an example of me using the graph and the Graph Explorer, and then I'm going to get you to follow along in the activity after I've shown you what it looks like. So here I am in the Microsoft Graph Explorer, and let me take you through the first time login experience. All right, so of course, the first thing we need to do is sign into the Graph Explorer. If it's your first time signing in, this is of course where you sign in with the account, and notice how it asks for permissions. Click accept. This is why, of course, for anyone that doesn't have a test environment, we made sure we provided you with the test environment details for today. Now that I'm logged in, and you'll notice my demo environment is called, my name is Ken Meyer in this example. This is, of course, a real Office 365 tenant, so everything you're seeing here is real. I can go down on the left-hand side, scroll down, and straight I can even see Microsoft Teams examples. And I can simply click Get My Joined Teams. It's just that easy. But hang on a second. Forbidden 303. You need to consent to the permissions. Click the Modify Permissions tab. Remember, we always need the correct permissions as part of that security to be able to make sure we can call the Microsoft Graph. And in this example, to be able to call the graph to see the teams that I'm a part of, it requires a few permissions to be consented to. So this is where I simply go through and then click on consent. And what this is meaning is that for my user that I'm logged in as, this user in example here, Ken, has the ability to go through and then make these Graph API requests. And of course, the reason that I'm able to consent is because Ken has the administrator credentials that Ken allows the ability to consent. If I was just an end user like a student and I tried to consent here, it would not allow me to because I don't have the Office 365 admin privileges. But because I do as Ken, there we go, you can see there I've now consented. So make sure I scroll through and I've gone through and I've said, yep, consented for the required permissions. And now just like that, I can click Run Query. And notice the /me/join teams, just like that, I can now see the teams that myself is a member of. And notice the Office 365 group ID, the display name for my business school staff, and within a quick second, I can see exactly the same team in the Teams UI as the Microsoft Graph has shown me. So that's it. Really nice, really easy, and I didn't have to even type anything in. The Graph Explorer allows me to get started with just a few clicks. No copy paste even required. One thing I will always highlight is notice the response preview. The response preview gives you all of the critical information that you need as part of more complex workflows. For example, if you wanted to add more members to an Office 365 group, it will need to have the group ID. And just like that, you saw it easily returned the Office 365 group ID for my business school staff. Really nice, really easy for you to be able to then get started. So in this example, this is where I'm now going to give you 3 minutes to follow along and do exactly what I just shared with you. So this is where I'm going to invite everyone now to go through and to open up your web browser. And in your web browser, we have a nice short link for you, which is aka.ms/ge for Graph Explorer. And I'll also post this into the chat, into the announcement window. So what you need to do in the next 3 minutes is log into the Graph Explorer. with your test account or your sandbox environment, or really whatever environment that you have that's appropriate for you to use right now. And we did provide a free one as part of the setup instructions for anyone that didn't already have it for today. And this is where go through, make sure you accept the permissions, and then run the query to be able to get your joined teams. All right, you've got 3 minutes. Please go ahead and complete 1, 2, 3, and get yourself ready with the Graph Explorer and run potentially your first Graph API command. Lovely. So remember, if you have any questions, please use the chat window on the left hand, I should say the right hand side. Now heading across to our next activity. Let's go through and now create a team. So to create a team, this is where I'll show you how I've created the team, and then we'll do it together. So in this regard, this is where I go ahead and I just looking at the Microsoft Docs. So this is the public facing documentation. Again, everything is available to you as part of the public information. So of course you can find this with your search engine, or of course at docs.microsoft.com. So what I can do here is I can see I want to create a team, and that's the post that I was talking about earlier, beta/teams, because we want to create something. So notice I go over, I click on post, beta, and I'll talk about that. We're using beta for right now. These will be going to 1.0 very, very soon, and I'll cover that towards the end of today. And then quite simply, we copy across the 3 lines and then also the opening and closing curly braces. Notice I'm using the standard team. So for anyone here that's using the test environment, of course, it's an enterprise account, so you can only use the standard team. But one thing to keep in mind is I didn't check my permissions first. So always go to modify permissions before you click run. And look at that, we need to click consent. So make sure I consent, so I do have the permissions to be able to run the create team request. In this example, it's the group read write all. Let's just go back over to that request body and now paste in exactly the right information. Lovely. And now we go through and click run query. Notice when I go over to Teams, there it is, my sample team has been created. A quick note here for anyone that is using the Microsoft developer account, which was the sandbox environment. If you don't already have a sandbox environment set up, that Microsoft developer account is using an enterprise account. So that means that's why we're going to be using the standard team type. And then of course, when you move across into your Office 365 education tenancy, that's when you can create the class teams. For anyone that has a sandbox account in a class, I should say in an education tenant, that's where of course you can then please use the class team type. The reason I'm using the standard team just temporarily is so everyone who is joining us today has the ability to go ahead and create a standard team, and then we can then just change the variable to create that class team type. All right, so let's do that now as an activity. So this is where we head across and we're going to do a post command. Let me quickly drop that link so you have that information into the chat window. So as a quick reminder, this time now you will need to go across and then click on the link itself, which is giving you access to the aka.ms/Teams Today IT. So let me just bring that up in the browser. So when you go to that URL, you'll notice here it takes you to OneDrive. As part of OneDrive, we then have the activity sample code. So that way, just to make it easy to copy and paste, and this is just the same as you have on the Microsoft Docs site. So please make sure you go to the short link, and I've also provided it in the chat window for you. So now please create your first team using then the provided sample file. So we've got 1:30 to do that. So remember, step 1 is switch it now to post because we're posting a request. Step 2 is now update it so it's /beta/teams. So there's the full URL. Make sure you then click on modify permissions and check that you have consented to the required permissions. And then the third part is, of course, go ahead and then click and then add the request body, which is part of activity 2, the sample file that's provided in aka.ms/Teams Today IT. Fantastic. Okay, so what that will do is, of course, go through and you should now see a team that has been created, and it would be exactly the same as the process you saw me do just a few moments earlier. So that's where I went through, I clicked create, and then of course we went here to the activity2 file. And notice we have now, make sure if you did get an error at all that you do have both the opening and closing curly brace, and then you copy that across. Now, remember I said we're using the standard type just currently for anyone who's using the test environment using the Microsoft developer account. Of course, that's just an enterprise environment. And I'll show you in a moment later how we can then just simply change that to be the education class, which creates the class team. Okay, so what you should now have is if you go back over into Teams itself, this is where you'll notice you've actually now just created a brand new team. For anyone that, for example, might not have access to that brand new team, this is where you'll want to make sure that go ahead and just check particularly that you have consented to the APIs and that you haven't missed any of those curly braces. So remember at the beginning, if it showed up and it had the 303 forbidden, and then it says, you need to request the correct permissions, that quite simply meant I needed to go through and then use the correct permissions required. And so the Graph Explorer, that's what's so great about it, is it's showing me the things that I need to be aware of to then help me practice this before I then write my own logic, for example, in my environment itself. All right, so let's take things one step further now. And what we're going to do is create a team one more time, but we're going to do that team slightly differently. Now, you'll notice we're going to do the same steps as before, but we're going to use activity file 3. Now, you might be saying, well, Dominic, I just created a team. What's the difference here? There's a very, very important difference. And this is when we think back to the University of East London example, how they were then pre-creating not just the class team, but they were pre-creating the team with set channels and even pre-pinned tabs like the website tab for their learning environment, or having things like different apps pre-installed. So you'll notice if I head over back now to the web browser, and if we go to activity file 3, this is a much longer set of JSON. So what we need to do is make sure that you select everything and then copy that whole thing across. And this is where we've got now a minute, and I'll explain exactly what this is doing in 1 minute's time. So what we're now going to do is activity 3 is creating a team with a template, and you'll see the difference with this shortly. All right, so let's head over into Teams and let's do that one together. So all I need to simply do is go ahead, copy everything in the Graph Explorer, paste it in, and you'll notice here that we have a few interesting things. Post, beta, and then I'll go ahead and you'll notice it's creating, I'm calling this one technical writing. You could call it whatever you'd like, and well, let's go ahead. Now I simply go ahead and click Run Query. And then accepted 202. All right, so now that we've created that, what's actually happening? So now I'm going to head back over into Teams. And notice I have my technical writing 505, which is the one I just updated a few seconds ago. Now you might be saying, well, Dominic, this kind of looks the same as before. What's different here? And the difference is the graph is now going in through and managing all of the logic for you to be able to not just create the team, but you'll notice over the next few minutes, it's going to create the channels, it's going to add the apps, it's even going to customize the apps. And that's what this template is doing. So it's managing all of that extra logic for you. You're not having to now write additional APIs to add things like channels. Notice here how we then have a channel which is called display name week 1, display name week 2. So we're actually going to be creating the channels as well. Notice when my general channel, we're actually even then pre-adding apps, which is exactly how University of East London were able to have things like their LMS webpage. And in this example, I'm just going to take a generic URL, but of course you could take the URL to your learning management system or another website content that you want students to view. Notice we can then even pre-configure things like the YouTube tab. And then that will have, for example, the YouTube video available to be able to use. All right, so let's go through a few more things, and then I'll show you that when it's complete. So heading across now to add a channel. And I know this is a bit of a longer webinar today, so we will just need a few more minutes to wrap up for the webinar. So we'll go just a little bit past the hour. So to be able to create a channel, this is where you'll notice if I go through, I can go ahead and I can now click on the channel itself, allows me to go through and one thing I want to do, of course, when I create that channel is I need the group ID for the team. So remember, this is why we sometimes go back and do things like the get teams or get the teams that I'm a member of, because it allows me to see that group ID. Now that I have the group ID, I can then use that ID to be able to then correctly create the channel, of course, in the correct team. So notice here when I go over and then I can replace where it says team ID, I replace it with the ID for the team, which is exactly the same as the Office 365 group. I can then click Run Query. And then just like that, what it's done is it's now said, I want to go through and then create my team. And I've now added in this example, my architecture discussion channel to my sample team that I created earlier. There we go. Just like that, I can use the graph to add a channel manually, or notice we were using a template before to add multiple channels in one go. What about now, speaking of adding multiple members or multiple channels, adding multiple members as a batch process? This is where I can go through and I've got the ability to then use the Microsoft Graph to add a batch of users. So I'll just show a few users, but again, this is where you could add as many users as you need to that class team. So again, we're going to post some information. This time it's /batch. And what I've done here is, of course, I've replaced it with then the team ID that I want my users to be added to. And I'm also then using the ID of my users that the user will have. So this is simply that ID that they have as part of Azure Active Directory. Notice when I go across back to my team now, I have the ability here to see now I was able to add 3 members instantly. And of course, you could add many more members than that. This is just the example for today. Now, at the end of the life cycle, we've created a team, we've added channels, we've added members. There's been a really great semester or term that's passed. One of the other fantastic things we can do with the graph is also archive teams. What that does is it makes them go to a read-only state. And so everything I'm showing you here is publicly available APIs. I just want to show an example of how these look when they're being done, because just in the interest of time, we're not going to be able to go through each of them one by one as a hands-on activity. But notice again, it's all public information. So just from docs.microsoft.com, I can see to be able to archive a team, I simply need that team ID. So again, I just need to go ahead and grab that team ID. So if you put it into Notepad, then you'll already have it handy, or I can just always go and get the teams that I'm a member of. And then simply /teams/ID. So this is where I go ahead, post. Notice this is a version 1.0 /teams /the ID /archive.
And then you also have the JSON where you could also change the SharePoint online site itself. I simply click Run Query. Notice it says accepted. And now I can head back over into Teams. This team was archived, so you can't make any changes. So this is a great one if you want students to still be able to view their courses, maybe for revision as they move from a first year to a second year, but they're not going to be able to go and make any changes to it. The last topic that I'll cover as part of the graph, which is one of the top ones that a lot of people are asking about, is how do we create that activate button, for example, that Kingston University have, that UEL were referring to. Quite simply, the activate button is created in two parts. Part one, we create an Office 365 group of type class. And then part two, we add a class team to the Office 365 group. Because remember, teams are always sitting on top of Office 365 groups. And effectively what we're doing is by stepping up from a group to a team, we're able to then activate that button, which is basically saying, okay, you're turning into a class, but I want you to pause until that teacher or educator is ready. So the way that we do this, you'll notice again, everything here is publicly available on the website. I simply go over, I need to do a create the group. Notice I did highlight that it's an application permission required. So application permissions do require that you host the app somewhere. I'm just doing this in Azure, makes it really easy to do. And then in the interest of time, I've pre-created the Office 365 group. So notice I'm in my Azure Active Directory and I'm looking at my Math 301. When I go into Teams, I have not yet turned that into a team, so it's not appearing here. So to do that, all I need to do is go through and create a team from an Office 365 group. So notice how I simply can go ahead and when I go back to the Graph Explorer, I can go and now take that Office 365 group that I have created. Now I can then here update the template to be education class. And last but not least, I'm going to put in that group ID for my Math 301. Remember, I can also query it, whether I use the graph to get that group ID, or I can just go back and copy it across like I did there from the Azure AD portal. And now I simply am ready to go. I'm going to turn this existing group into a class team. Clicking Run Query. Lovely, there we go, accepted, green, nice 202. And you'll notice when I head back over to Teams now, that Math 301 has Ken and Kara as the educators. So when I log in as Ken, notice now how I am Ken, and there is my Math 301 class with the 10 students are waiting to join, and now I can click Activate. So this is the really fantastic part that you also get when you go through and then create your teams and use these automation capabilities. Let's load that up in 2 seconds, and I'll just do a really quick overview. So remember how we created that templated team. What did that JSON do? Well, remember how I took you through, it had then channels that were pre-created, it had a practice exam channel, and now notice if you switch back to your Teams client, with that one command that you ran, everything is now automatically made. Notice when I go over and click on LMS web page, this is my website URL, and of course, whatever website URL that you choose it to be. I can see here week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4. Notice that it's also automatically added my apps. So this is where I have my poll app, Polly. I have Kahoot, that's been pre-added. And if I go over to my practice exam channel, this is where I can even see things like a YouTube. The YouTube app has a YouTube video that has been already configured, so it's ready to go for people to watch. So this could be a welcome video from the university, or in this example, we're talking about my technical writing TW 505 class that I have created. So this is really bringing it all together, and that's where you should now be able to see that class team has been fully generated. I should say that standard team has been generated, and of course you can then change that to a class type if you're in an Office 365 education environment. So to wrap up for today, just a few last things. Frequently asked questions that I do get a lot. All right, well, I've used the graph today, and I used to use the Graph Explorer. Do I use the Graph Explorer in production? So no,
The graph, of course, you'd be using in production, but you'd be using it as part of an automated process. Like you saw me within the Azure portal, I had an app that was sitting there calling the graph. And you can see here from University of East London, that's exactly what they had with their scheduled process. And that's what's calling the APIs. The Graph Explorer is just a way to practice how you use the graph. So we used some beta APIs today. When are they going version 1.0? So those are expected to go to 1.0 later this month.
This is awesome. Who can I work with if I need help using the Microsoft Graph? And that is where we have our Microsoft partners are there to help you deploy, configure, and make this real. So this is where you can save a huge amount of time by working with Microsoft partners who have managed offerings to allow you to configure the graph and to help you then set it up. And that's someone I would highly recommend that you work with. Just simply search the Microsoft Partners website for a partner near you. Let's wrap up today's session. This is where we covered a lot of content, and you've seen now a real example from the University of East London, how they're automating thousands of classes at a time, the options that you have available with School Data Sync, the ability to then use the Microsoft Graph to automate each step of that team's life cycle. And then we finished, of course, going hands-on, and I hope you've now got some teams that you're looking at right now that have been automatically created. Congratulations to you. And that's where it brings our session to a close. Thank you so much for your time today. I hope you found it to be useful, and have a great rest of your day.